Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm your host, Rachel. Today we have Allison Chin with us. She is currently a junior at Duke University. She is also a trained pastry chef and a social media influencer. So, as you can see, this is someone who personifies the idea of being multi hyphenate, multi passionate. And I'm excited for you all to learn from her today. Hi, Allison.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for coming. Excited to hear more about your story. I know you are already, you're young and you've already done so much. So I think it's really inspiring to hear what you've done in your journey and to hear more about where you're going in the future. The way that I got connected with Allison is that I saw in an alumni publication that her and some friends had started a concept at Duke called Stage. And I would love to hear more about what that name means. It's spelled stage. So when I first reached out to her, I was like, oh, yeah, stage at Swift. She's like, actually, it's Stage, and had a really cool meaning behind the name. So would love to hear more about what that name means and how you came to create this new concept on campus.
Yeah, my friends and I, Herbert and Brian, we started this pop-up restaurant called Stage, and we named it Stage at Swift because Swift is the apartment building that we all live in, and that's where we run our pop-up restaurant and dinners out of. Honestly, when we advertise to our friends and to our friends on campus and people in the community, we also call it Stage because no one knows how to spell Stage.
Yeah.
So it's totally fine that you thought that. We actually wanted the word and the name of the restaurant to be a double entendre in a way because stage in French is the word for like low paying internship or unpaid internship in the case of the culinary industry. So Herbert, Brian, and I over the summer all did stages where we all worked in a restaurant or in my case, a bakery in Paris. And we just learned as much as we could from the culinary industry and the work that they were doing in those spaces because we had no experience. So we didn't get paid. We wanted to start this restaurant as an opportunity to taste our food and showcase our love of cooking with the community because we are obviously in classes all day and we no longer have that sort of professional cooking experience that we had over the summer. So it's our little small stage for our food. So
Yeah.
it works in every language.
It does. I love that. And you mentioned, we'll come back to this part because you did mention working in Paris, which is sounds amazing. So I want to hear more about that. But when you came up with this idea on campus, I was really intrigued when I read about this because for me, when I have a new idea, I get really scared to start it. People I talk to were like, how do we fund this? Where do we get help? How do we start? So, when you all were coming up with this idea to bring a dining concept to campus, you're full time students, you have classes to go to. Where did you start to make this really come to life?
So I think with like I think I echo the sentiment of a lot of people, and honestly, a lot of people that started restaurants as well, from like people and like owners that I've talked to, is you really just like go for it. I don't really know how we got over that barrier, but a lot of people, a lot of owners that I've spoken with, they also have said like, "Oh, we had no experience. We just wanted to open up a restaurant." And maybe that's a little bit naive, but that sort of mindset and driven attitude to just learn whatever and to learn as you go is really something that we also took. We had to figure out logistics as we were doing the dinner each week. And each week we did our restaurant dinners, we got better and faster and more organized.
So, every week you were doing dinners, and these were, it was 7 or 8 courses?
Yeah, it was a 7 course tasting menu. Since I've had a lot more training in like pastry, I did the last 2 courses of pastry and then also helped them R&D the other components. So 7 altogether.
Okay, so 7 course dinners every single week, and you would invite people. How did you get people to show up for your dinners?
Our first dinner was our sort of like trial run dinner to see how long it would take. So we just invited friends and family to sit down and try everything because service was really slow and we weren't really organized and our kitchen is really small. So we had to figure out how we could all work together in that tiny space. Um, from there, people we just had people post on social media, which is also like I guess my other area of
Yeah.
expertise. We had our friends post on social media. We had photographers, our friends who love to photograph, come in and we give them food in exchange for photos that looked really nice that we posted on Instagram as well. And then it was just sort of a word of mouth thing. I think that we're all really passionate about food, and that really comes through in any conversation we have. And so then we just sort of slip it into conversation that we have this cool sort of restaurant idea that we're doing. I think our classmates and people in the community have been really supportive about that.
It's really smart of y'all to start with a soft opening with your friends and family.
Yeah.
I know sometimes restaurants will do that. And with any idea you have, just testing it out first. I think sometimes we put pressure that it has to be a whole production before we're ready. And you are like, let's just like we know you knew it was going to be clunky, you knew it was going to be slow, but you're like, let's try it and let's learn from it and then expand it out. So that was really smart. And then I loved how you got creative. I'm sure you didn't have a big marketing budget to go put this out there. So you're like, let's use social media. Let's get friends to take pictures. We can offer them food. So you got really creative with your resources.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we had no budget. The only at the beginning, especially, we were operating off of the cost of the dinner, which for college students, it's really hard to price that accordingly. So we sort of upfronted a lot of money and our funds to like get equipment and get groceries and things. And then by the end of it, then we started generating some like more profit. It was like a tiny investment, but
Okay.
more of an investment of like fun and I don't know, a passion project investment.
And you had mentioned when we talked before that you started out with this concept of the weekly 7 course tasting menu, and then you kind of evolved and tried different things. So tell me more about how you learned and then decided to try different ways of doing this and pivoting.
Yeah, so the entirety of last semester, we did, oh, I think 14 dinners or 15 dinners, which is honestly crazy because we were really busy with schoolwork. So I honestly don't know how we managed to pull that off every week. I think it just became like an integral part of our routine, honestly. But towards the end, we also wanted to experiment with different formats because it started to feel like we were running a restaurant a little bit, which was not the which in a way was the original goal, but we didn't want it to just become another task that we had to check off during our weekly routines. So we also did a pop-up sort of pocha restaurant where we just served fried chicken sandwiches and then a dessert. And this is honestly like probably the best event that we held. We
Oh,
also held
nice.
it in the apartment. We made over 50 sandwiches for friends and students to come. We served them and they stayed for a little bit. And it was like we were actually running a more fast casual restaurant,
Mhm.
which was really fun. And we had a band playing
Nice.
of local students too. So that event felt completely different to the dinners we were running because the dinners are just 8 people. So it's a really small, intimate place of conversation. And we really can teach everyone or talk to everyone about the food that we're preparing and have some really smaller conversations. But that event with our pocha event was really crazy and just like so many people moving in and out. And there's a really great energy to the whole thing. So that I think also sort of refreshed our interest in
Mm,
keeping like stage alive as well for next semester.
yeah.
It was really fun and different.
So you went from these quiet, intimate events to fun, band, people coming in and out, fast pace. How did the three of you make all of these sandwiches and all the food by yourselves, or did you have to ask people for help to get this done?
For the most part, all of the cooking was done by one of the three of us. There wasn't much space, so it's really hard to bring in more hands in the kitchen.
Mhm.
In terms of other logistics, we occasionally brought in other people, but I think that's one of the things that I really want to work on for next semester is to delegate and sort of expand the team so that way it doesn't feel like we're doing everything, just the three of us.
Yeah. And I know you've echoed throughout the conversation how important it is to have fun and keep that energy in what you're doing. It seems like if you don't get any help, then at some point you all might burn out. So it's smart that you're getting ahead of it and saying, let's get the help before we do get to burnout point so that it is still fun and enjoyable. And have there been other students on campus who see you doing this and say, "Oh, I'm interested in, culinary and cooking. I would love to do something like this. Have you seen a community start to pop up around food on campus?
Yes, I think that is probably the main thing that I learned from this experience is there are just so many foodies and so many people interested in food on campus. I mean, of course, everyone loves to eat, so it's
Yes,
a
I
really
do.
easy thing. Yeah, it's a really easy thing to bring up with most people because you can talk to almost anyone about food, which is
Yeah.
what I love about it. But yeah, I think after we sort of talk about it. There's so many students, particularly freshmen who have just come onto campus and haven't cooked in a very long time because they don't have access to a kitchen, who seem really interested and wanting to help out. We're trying to figure out how we can include as many people while also keeping everything organized. So that leadership component, I guess we're still working on.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. So people are interested, the people are there. I will say I graduated from Duke in 2012, and I remember that was where I first learned about quinoa. No one knew how to pronounce it. And so at the restaurant on campus they had the pronunciation beside it, but I always felt like for a college campus they were kind of ahead of the trends when it comes to food, and it made people kind of get into it. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I would honestly say that obviously we complain about the food because
Yeah.
we do get sick of it, but Duke dining is really up there. I have made many TikToks about it before and people are like, "What school do you go to? This is like Disneyland for food." So, yeah, I would say the food here is really good and it does attract a lot of foodies. I think it's just we don't really have an organized space yet
Mm,
for people who really want to cook. I just think there are just like a lot of people disparately who really enjoy it. We don't have any like particular clubs or like places to gather around that.
I see. Okay. So
Yeah.
maybe that's future plan to bring everyone together.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
the few places I have found it is I did take a French class in cooking and like food and culture. And then also next semester, my friend and I are planning on running like a little house course, which is these are like student run courses where they like teach on any particular topic that they choose. So we might do something like that too. But again, the scale for these things is much smaller than what I would hope because obviously there are more people that love food than like the 20 people we can have in the class.
that makes sense. And with taking on the house course, thinking about how to iterate for next year, and also, as you mentioned, starting to delegate, there are a lot of leadership components in all of those things. What have you learned about being a leader and being responsible for an idea? So not just having it and executing it, but really being responsible for making sure it happens and people get the product that you had promised them.
This is hard and honestly something that I still struggle with every day. Obviously, a large component of it is like organization, which is probably my main weakness. Social media would suggest otherwise, but I swear I'm like a hot mess sometimes.
We all
I
are.
I think the biggest thing for me was just, like, communication, like, out the wazoo. At the beginning, it was really hard because I had just come back from abroad. Herbert and Brian have spent a lot of time together, and so it was really hard for me to sort of be completely involved and integrated into the team, I think, and so we weren't always on the same page. And then we would just talk and brainstorm together, and those are more fun, informal ways for us to connect as a team
Mhm.
and also keep things fun and interesting because R&D designing new dishes is something that's probably one of the most fun things about
Mm,
cooking is that being creative part. And then we had weekly meetings and things to sort of keep logistics going. Even if the meetings weren't productive, I think the act of coming together, whether it be around eating and having food or talking about accounting, I guess, all helped me keep myself on track more, I think.
Yeah, I think relationship building is a huge part of leadership and then building a team. So even if you don't have a perfect outcome from the meeting or something to do like an action, that's still super valuable. And you talked about, your part in this in terms of the food, you really focused on the pastry component because that's where you had your training. So I'm thinking you're a junior in college. How did you get trained in pastry? When did you have time for this? Like, how did this happen? And you also have social media. So I know you mentioned, because we've talked before, so I know you've taken a gap semester. So tell me more about like how you came to that gap semester and then how did you spend that time?
Yeah, so like I've been saying a lot, I think for me personally, I need something to keep my life interesting or something to keep me going. I think a lot about what my goals are and what motivates me. And a lot of times I feel I get a little bit lost or I don't know what to do or I don't know why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. That really hit me hard sophomore fall, where I was actually pre-med, a lot of incoming Duke students,
Yep.
and I was working the lab, I was taking all the classes, I was doing all the right things, and yet I still burnt out. Um, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know why I was continuing on this path, honestly. And it just no longer interested me like it did when I first came into college. So, because I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, I didn't feel like it was particularly useful for me to stay at Duke because I wouldn't be able to take advantage of all the resources and opportunities we had here if I just genuinely didn't know which ones I even wanted to go out and look for. So, I decided to take a gap semester, which has become increasingly popular. I was very nervous about it in the beginning
Yeah.
because I felt I was going off track and I would
Mm,
be behind my peers. But like that's very invalid comparison.
yeah, I
Now
agree.
that now that I'm back. So I decided I had first wanted to like find a job and figure out like what career I really wanted, like in a solid, concrete way through like an internship of some kind. But then I decided that I wanted to genuinely take some time off and do something that I at least knew that I really liked because I was so lost in what I liked and what I wanted to do and how that would translate to my career that I really just wanted to make sure that I still liked things
Yeah.
in a sense. And so I knew I really liked cooking. I knew I really liked baking. That's something that I always did for fun to decompress in high school. And I would just bake like hundreds of things at like 2 a.m. So I decided I want to go to pastry school because that would also give me some structure to my days and to my free life without any school. And then I also decided I was like, well, I took French in high school, so might as well go to France because they do have some of the best pastries in the world.
They do.
So that's yeah, so then I just literally I applied to a school, got in, and I was like, "Okay, I will see you all in 8 months."
Wow.
A lot of people ask me how I came to this decision,
Mhm.
because I think it's again, seems like a very drastic change, but that's something I really wanted, and I felt like I just wanted to dive in and do something completely different. Maybe it's like that impulsive maybe this is like a universal impulsive mindset of people in the culinary world.
Do you think so?
I have no idea, but these seem to be just like, you know, people ask me like how I like had the sort of like courage to just like do that. But I think it's just a matter of diving in. It seemed like really cool to me at the time. And yeah, obviously I was really nervous about it. And it is kind of a crazy thing in hindsight, but I don't know. I just dived in.
Also think it's really mature of you to say, wait, I'm on this path. I worked really hard to get here, but it's really not working for me anymore. So I think I'm going to get off of the traditional path and do something different. I want to feel alive. I think it takes a lot to admit that and then to actually go after what you want and get off the path that everyone wants you on. People of all ages struggle with that. That's hard for all of us. So I really commend you for doing that. And I think it takes a lot to say that. And I'm sure you had lots of conversations with your family about your decision and what you were doing. So that does take a lot. And I relate to what you're saying. I think a lot of us do. I also came in pre med. I made really bad grades in some of those classes. So I was like, this is not, and it wasn't fun. I'm like, this is not fun. Let me get off. But then similarly, I tried to attach myself to some other career so I would know what I was doing. And since I've left, my career has been nothing but a straight line. And I think I didn't really have the awakening moment till much later in my career when I was at a job and on a path. And I'm like, I hate this. I don't want to be here. So I just jumped off the path and everyone thought I was losing my mind. And actually, It took a while for me to figure it out, but it led to me being a much happier, healthier person. So I really commend you for doing that and for going after what you want. When you moved to France, you were in pastry school in Paris. What was that like being there? I'm assuming on your own, you probably didn't know anyone. What was that experience like of being so far away from home, kind of uncertain of what your path is moving forward, but just knowing you wanted that moment that was right in front of you?
A large part of it was I really wanted to like live in the present for the time that I was away because I totally understand the anxiety of, oh, what is like the next couple years of my life going to look like? What am I going to do over the summer and things like that? And for that moment in time, I really set it aside and was like, I'm going to have this sort of not necessarily carefree attitude, but I'm going to take the time to invest in this one thing, and I'm not going to worry about what I need to do in the future to sort of compensate for the fact that I'm a little bit behind or the fact that I took all this time off. I think that was really helpful. Ironically enough, I think like disconnecting from social media and those things and seeing what my friends are up to was also really helpful because once again, it does feel like we are all to be on this certain path and we're in it together, which is in a way really nice, but also it's hard to separate what is something you want versus what you think you want because everyone else is doing it. I still struggle with comparison. I think we always will. So in that sense, it was really easy to sort of disconnect from who's getting what internship or will I be employed because I was literally an ocean away from
Yeah.
my life, and it was completely different. I feel like I just treated it like living on my own, like being an adult, which I don't know. I don't know how to be an adult, but I think all of those like fun, like really boring adult tasks became really fun because they were all in French to me. So I really just hide myself with trying to like experience and adapt to like the culture and whatever was in front of me. So for me, it was pretty easy to live by myself. And of course, I also had friends from school and things like that. I did not know anyone in France prior to this. I had friends in my classes. I'd call my parents occasionally if I remembered. I just took it as a challenge to see what everything I could do by myself.
I love that. I think I will say, side note, after adulting for over 10 years, I feel like I need to go to France and make it fun in a different language because I'm like adulting has not been very fun lately. But I love
No,
that
I know, I know.
you embraced it with such a positive mindset.
Yeah, I treated everything as like even all of the problems I had as being a quote unquote adult, I just treated them all as like fun, like French learning experiences. For instance, I didn't realize that I had to pay for my water and electricity because I didn't understand the rental contract
Oh
because it was in
no.
French. So then I had my electricity turned off for
Oh
like a whole week while I figured out how to pay that.
no.
And while that absolutely sucked, and I stayed at my friend's house, and my apartment was a disaster, I just thought it was really funny. You know, there's a first for everything, and I experienced it in French. And
Yeah.
I thought even things like that, I thought were super cool.
And you know, some the lessons we learn the hard way or by experience, they stick with us. So I'm sure now, next time you get an apartment, you'll definitely not get your electric turned off and you'll read that contract, that rental agreement.
And I'm sure it'll be 10 times easier to read.
Yeah,
So,
unless you move back to France.
yeah. So things like that. For me, it kept everything interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so you were in France, meeting friends in school, and then that's also where your social media career came to life. So tell me how social media, I know you had taken a break from it, so tell me how you came back to it and kind of decided to pursue that.
I have always loved like video editing, making funny videos, entertaining videos. So that is something that I have always dabbled in since I was in middle school. I thought this was a really fun opportunity to also make videos because this is such an insane experience, I think, for me, that I really wanted a way to sort of archive it. and just have that memory with me and share it with my friends and family because there were so many people being like, I want photos, I want this. And I was like, okay, well, if you all want this, then I think the easiest way for me to do it is to just share it with everyone all at once in public, in a public space. So even though I took a break from social media, I immediately basically started my like public persona, I guess you could say, because I think of them as pretty different spaces. So I just started like filming little clips every day of what we were making in class and then sticking them together and sort of explaining what we were doing because the world of French pastries and French desserts is pretty different than what we are used to in the US. And so I really wanted to share some of that because I think that's a part of a culture that we don't really see as much just because there's a language barrier too. Um, so I just started posting every day and then it gained some traction. I do remember everyone I think remembers like the first video they had that like goes like semi-viral.
Yeah.
So I had that and just like it was pretty addicting and fun. So then I just kept going at it and now we're here and I also it is still a part of my like daily routine basically, which I think is like a crazy sort of like a crazy after effect of the whole experience.
So it's mostly TikTok, right?
Yeah, so I do short form content, so all the vertical, like short videos that you see, whether it be on like TikTok or Instagram, YouTube, stuff like that.
It's interesting because it sounds like you didn't go into it hoping to build a large following, or was that your intent, or were you really just like, oh, I want to share with family and friends, and then that kind of happened and you liked it and it kept going?
I think everyone that like, goes on TikTok hopes that, oh, maybe they can go viral, which is also a hope that I had as well.
Yeah.
And so a large part of it was I just wanted to share it with other people, but I also thought that again there was like value in like spreading this to like, as many people as possible. Once that first video went viral, I was like, okay, maybe I can maybe I can continue to do this since I just really enjoy making videos. I think it was pretty easy to stay on that wave and I had so many ideas of different videos and things I can make in addition in addition to the daily vlogging.
I notice a theme I'm hearing throughout you pursuing pastry and then pursuing social media is that you just did things that were fun for you that you naturally like. So you liked to bake in high school. You were doing it just because. And so you pursued that whenever you were at a moment where you didn't know what to do next. And then when you decided to look at social media, you liked video editing. So you decided to do videos. You didn't go say, I'm going to create carousels every day. Even though I like videos, you went with the format that you found enjoyable. Do you think that natural enjoyment or fun has pushed you to keep it going?
I definitely say that's like how it all started. And I also think this is a really hard thing to come to terms with because I feel a little guilty when things are fun and then I
Mm,
do them all the time because I was brought up I was brought up where work is work. Like this doesn't have to be your passion project. And that is totally a valid way of living as well, I think. Now, I also again, like every day I sort of am like tempted to get a regular job or a regular internship.
yeah.
And I still might do that because there's a level of anxiety there that's like ingrained in me. And since I'm pretty early on in my career, something that I definitely should, I think should experience and should try out as well. But I think by doing things that I actually enjoyed and sort of like getting over the idea that your hobby can't be your something you're completely invested in all the time. I really was able to like have enough stamina to do say social media for a year because it is sort of an everyday grind. And I think that by doing the things you like, you can also do the intermediary work that is just like really tedious and boring because you have this like greater goal in mind of what you want to do with it. I do think it has kept me going in a lot of ways.
Oh, I love that. You are the theme is disrupting the defaults, and you're doing that in every way through all your different opportunities. But also, you're like, I was raised to think of a job as work, and I'm disrupting that. I'm going to enjoy my work. And even though sometimes I feel guilty, I'm still going to pursue it. So I love that you've pushed against that and kind of created your own path there. You have so many options ahead of you. You are a computer science major. We didn't even talk about that part, but you're a computer science major and also visual studies, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
visual media. It's actually computational media major. It's a new interdepartmental major, which
Oh,
is consisting of computer science and visual media.
oh, so they're combined.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a computational media major. You are a social media influencer. You have a following. You have worked on stage with your friends and you are looking at what's next there. There's so much ahead of you, so many options for what to do next. I know you're coming up on senior year. What are you thinking about? Have you decided?
Oh gosh. I have no idea because like you said, there are so many potential options that I it kind of sometimes paralyzes me a little bit and I don't know where to start. And I don't know, to deal with that anxiety, I feel like I know a lot of senior friends who also don't really know what they're doing. And even some of my junior friends that have jobs lined up, who knows what they're going to do 5 years down the line. So I think everyone honestly has sort of the same anxiety of not knowing what they want to do. And I think I really embraced it a lot more after, doing all of these, after going to like France with no real plan for the after or coming back here and having all these different interests sort of carrying me in different directions. I think I'm going to continue exploring a little bit. I obviously have some things that keep me quote unquote grounded in my career path. So the social media things, obviously in my free time, I still love to cook. So, you know, if I ever do need a passion project to work on for a little bit, I will just like, cook a giant meal. Um, and those things I think will definitely stick with me for now while while they still interest me. But yeah, maybe I can also find other interests through working because yeah, I guess I am still trying to find a summer internship right now. So if anyone on the podcast wants to shoot me an email, I'd be more than happy to look into that as well.
Side note, anyone's hiring, let us know.
Yeah. I also think even if I were to do social media as a full-time thing, it is a business. So I would really love to get more experience on how other businesses are run and how other work environments are because social media, it's still pretty new and it would be more of a one woman show. Any other experiences would also be helpful.
Yeah, that's really smart of you to pursue different opportunities. You know, you've done this before, but you're like, I want to see how it looks in a company or how it looks in a different way, which I think is really smart. And I love your story because you've shown us that sometimes going off the path doesn't actually mess you up, but it propels you and it gives you other options. So instead of having one option in your major, you now have three different, at least three, you have many more, but at least three different career paths that you could easily take with experience and you've learned there. So I think that's really powerful to see how sometimes stepping off the path leads you to something greater and adds more path options, even though that can be stressful at times.
Yeah, I definitely resisted the idea of my having my passion be such a large part of like my work life, but so far, hopefully, so far it has been like a really interesting point of conversation and it does come up in my interviews and we do just talk about food.
I love that you're mentioning how food comes up in your interviews for other things. You have other things about you that you're interested in. You're showing them you can learn new things. You're curious. Companies want people who are going to ask questions and try new things, and they're not afraid to fail. So you're actually helping yourself a little bit. So I'm glad that that's coming up for you. People are hearing about what you're doing, and I know your story has inspired me so much. So I appreciate you sharing and for pushing against the path that's set for you and kind of creating your own path because you're inspiring so many people. And I'm sure all the listeners now feel empowered to take that next step that they've been waiting on. So, the last question before we go, I will ask everyone on season 2 this question. What advice would you give someone who wants to start disrupting those defaults in their life?
I think the main thing is to always be reevaluating and reassessing what you're doing and sort of reflecting on the experiences that you've had. Because I feel like for so long, for many years, I was trapped in a cycle of things that I no longer found interesting and was doing for the sake of doing. And really, my life has only changed within the past year. So you can take you can take the next step at any moment in your life, and who knows what will happen. My life has dramatically changed since the experiences I've had, and my career choices and what I'm thinking of potentially doing has also changed significantly in that past year. So I always, even now, am reassessing and reflecting on why I'm doing the things I'm doing and if they serve like my greater goals for what I want, whether it be in my career or I guess my life too.
Thank you so much. Reflection and reassessment are the things you're doing serving your goals. Oh, Allison, this has been such a great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. You still have so much ahead of you. I cannot wait to follow it and see what you do, what you decide. You have so many options. So, where can we find you?
I am plastered all over social media. So TikTok and Instagram is al.alchenny or al.chenny. And hopefully I show up on someone's For You page. So maybe you don't even need to try that hard to find me.
That's great. So if you see her on the For You page, make sure you follow along, and I will link all her info for social media in the episode notes. Thanks everyone for listening today and for joining us.